Welcome back to TinyBlueGames. My name's of course Csaw or Chris, and today we're talking about the Elder Scrolls Online in 2020. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the game's newest chapter, or expansion if you prefer, Greymoor, that released about a week ago, and whether or not I think it's a good purchase for new players. Now, if you're new to this channel, well, first off, welcome, it's great to have you here, but secondly, I am a fairly new player to the Elder Scrolls Online. I've played a lot of MMOs in general, but just at sort of the start of 2020, I decided to give the Elder Scrolls Online a shot and see how it was. So back then, I purchased the very base game when it was on sale. I believe it includes Morrowind, no matter what you buy now for base game. So I had the base Elder Scrolls game and the Morrowind chapter, but that amount of content was more than enough for, I think I have like about 250 hours played. I don't play it all the time, obviously, but it's still, you know, a game that I've sunk a fair bit of time into. And this is really the first additional purchase I've ever considered making for the game, and I did in fact purchase it, but I was on the fence about buying it for quite some time, and ultimately it was a lot of friends that I had that were playing the game, and they were getting the new chapter, the new expansion, and they're like, hey, come play with us, and we've all been there, we know how it turns up. But I wanted to do a little bit of a reflection on this and see if I really did enjoy what I got. Obviously it's just a week into the expansion, so there's still a lot to uncover, but I just wanted to give a brief overview of what I thought the expansion did well and what I thought the expansion didn't do well. Another big reason I decided to purchase the Greymoor chapter, as opposed to actually purchasing the Greymoor upgrade, was so that I could get the Elsewhere and Somerset chapters as well. So I already mentioned at the start of this, I was playing the base game, which typically comes with the Morrowind chapter. If you do buy the full Greymoor chapter without even buying the base game, you'll get the base game included and all of the chapters up to and including Greymoor. So you get the whole bundle of chapters, which is really nice. This was still quite good as I got the last two chapters and the Greymoor one. So in terms of chapter content, I had a lot. The other big thing here is that my friends typically enjoy doing raids, or as you would call them in ESO, trials. And with this, you do get access to pretty much all of the trials in game, as they are typically included in the chapter zone. So it made a lot of sense in terms of that purchase. The issue and the downfall of this is that there are still a lot of dungeons and other pieces of DLC content that I don't have access to without buying them individually from the Crown Store or having ESO Plus active. So if you're someone who needs to know that they have access to everything in a game to be happy, just by buying the full bundle of Greymoor, there's still going to be some stuff that you're missing. So it's important to know that when you go into the purchase, and I did know that. It's part of the things going on in my mind. I'm like, is it still worth having this without having the rest of the game? It does play a part in this purchase decision, but we'll get more into that at the end of this. I wanted to focus really in on some of the best parts of this chapter. And there are quite a few really good things that you get when getting the chapters. So I mentioned if you buy the full bundle or just the full chapter without doing the upgrade purchase, you do get access to all of the other chapters, which is great. You do get the Greymoor map as well as all of the quests and content in there, which is a ton of content. And one of the best parts of the Elder Scrolls Online is the questing and kind of the solo exploration aspects. So if you're someone who really loves questing and you just really like discovering the land, or maybe you've played Skyrim and you're really looking for, a place that you can go that's similar and has some callbacks, it's obviously different in this game. It's not the same game, but it's a really great option for you to explore. So I was really excited about that, and the map does look beautiful. There were some graphical issues that I detected in certain areas, but just logging off and logging in seemed to fix that. And on the whole, it was a really beautiful area, and I haven't even discovered a lot of the underground area. So there's a tremendous amount of open world to explore. You also get access to the Antiquities skill line, which is kind of like a archaeology skill line that you'd see in other MMOs. It reminds me a lot of archaeology in WoW. At least I think it was archaeology that WoW had way back. I think it was in Cataclysm. I'm trying to pull up all these memories all of a sudden, but it did feel really good because it allowed you to explore the map. It allowed you to explore other maps that you have as well around the world, and it allowed you to collect different things for just to have them or for your house. And for me, really excitingly, was a mount that you can get at the very end of this. As someone who currently just has a horse, any different mount is really exciting, so that was pretty cool to have as well. I mentioned this earlier on, but you do get access to the trial, and for this one there is a new trial. It's called Kind's Aegis, I believe, and the trial sets are still kind of a mixed bag at the moment. So in terms of the actual gear you get from it, it's not necessarily a required trial, but the way Elder Scrolls Online typically or is trying to work is that your gear and item level does not go up with each chapter, so it's never required that you get the gear from the newest chapter. There's just sometimes set bonuses that are better for certain roles from certain trials, and at the moment it doesn't seem like you'd need to be running this unless there's a specific build you want to run, but I'm also definitely not the person to give you advice on your build, so just something to keep in mind. The trial itself is pretty fun. I ran it on normal mode. There is a wide range of difficulties in the Elder Scrolls Online, so normal mode is kind of almost a story mode, but it's still got some challenge in it. At least this trial we wiped a few times, so that was something. And then it goes to veteran, and then there's typically hard modes as well. So there is a large amount of progression for people who are looking for that, and there will also be like achievements and stuff that you can collect as well. So that's pretty cool. And the final kind of big thing, and I kind of touched on this at the start, is that with these chapters, this is like buying a game, right? So you always have access to this. You can always log in and play through the story on different characters and stuff like that. So it's really nice that way. It's not like once you're done paying your subscription, you're not going to have access to it anymore. And I think that's one of the biggest advantages I see for buying the chapters, and just having them to play whenever you like. Alright, so we touched on a few of my favorite things with the chapter. Now I just wanted to highlight some of the negative aspects. The first big one I really have is that the chapters are pretty expensive. To get the full chapter that would include the other previous chapters, it was $80 Canadian, which is pretty expensive. The upgrade itself, if you're just going from elsewhere to Greymoor as an upgrade, was $60. So it made a lot of sense for me to get the full package and get access to those other chapters, but it's a pretty big purchase. It is nice though, as you do always have access to the game, but it's definitely something that you have to consider when buying it, right? The other thing is that it adds kind of more single player content than it does group content, which strictly as someone who plays MMOs to play an MMO, it's a part I don't love as much. For instance, there are already DLC portions to the Greymoor story. We saw that in the most recent DLC, the Harrowstorm. There's 2 dungeons, I believe, in there, and then there will probably be a dungeon DLC later on as well. The trial is included in this chapter, so you do have that, and you can obviously quest and do group events around the map, but typically it is those DLCs that have more of the dungeons, and I think the dungeons are one of the more interesting and well done parts of Elder Scrolls Online, so it's kind of sad that there's less of that in the chapters. Adding on to that last point, you're not going to experience the full Greymoor story without purchasing DLC components or having ESO Plus. So the chapter is the largest segment of the year story for the Elder Scrolls Online, but it won't include the dungeon pack, as I mentioned before, or any DLCs that come in the next couple quarters that will have to do with this story. So if you're someone who really wants to know exactly what's happened and follow the full thing, you're going to need to have the chapter as well as either purchase the DLCs or have ESO Plus. So you're just not going to get the whole story without that. So it's definitely something to keep in mind if you are someone who would focus on that, and just be aware that you're missing part of it, because it does kind of feel unfortunate. to be missing those pieces, but it is nice that you have the option to pick and choose where you want to spend your money as well. The final piece of this, and I'm sure you've heard it on other YouTube videos, I'm sure you're going to see it in the comments below, the game has a lot of issues with server performance, as well as certain graphical issues and like just falling into different walls and like going through barriers and stuff like that. I don't know what the story is, I'm a pretty new player myself, but the general consensus is that performance has been going downhill for a long time, and they keep promising to fix a lot of these things, but they don't seem to be getting fixed. So there's definitely some bigger YouTubers out in the Elder Scrolls area that have postponed purchasing this chapter until the servers get fixed, until things start to improve. So it's definitely something to keep in mind. Everything that I've ran has been doable. There's the odd time that things really do feel kind of clunky and stuff like that, and I'm not just talking about skill canceling and stuff like that, but like the actual servers do feel a bit choppy in places, or you get feared into a wall and you have to unstuck your character. So there's some issues like that, but typically I have been able to play and not had any issues myself, but it is something to keep in mind if you're someone who's really focused on that, and you're someone who's really concerned about that. Alright, so we've looked at some good, we've looked at some bad. What's my overall verdict on the chapter? I probably would still buy it again, specifically if you're someone who is going to get access to those other chapters. If you're not getting them in some other way, this does add a fair bit of content to the game, which is quite good. That being said, if you're someone who is still working through the base game, or you have certain pieces of content unlocked that you still have to play, I think it would be smart to wait a bit and get this chapter when it goes on sale, because the one thing that you can say with pretty good certainty with the Elder Scrolls Online is that the chapters do go on sale, and they go on pretty good sales as well. So if you can wait, I think that would be a smart move as well. But yeah, so overall, very happy with the chapter. I just think it is a little bit more expensive than I usually pay for things in MMOs, but that being said, it does have a lot of quality when it comes to the quest telling, to the voice acting, and the overall story. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.